Half a day YouTube, this is Demented One, and thank you for tuning into my channel. In today's video, we'll be reviewing and comparing two flat face trigger upgrade options for the Glock 19. As you can see here, this is my Gen 4 Glock 19 MOS. If you have not seen the previous video of the current upgrades, I will post a link below. The first trigger we'll be reviewing is the Overwatch Precision Tact trigger. As you can see here, it does have a flat face with a lip at the bottom. The trigger shoe is aluminum and it comes in a matte finish, a matte black finish. It also does come with a factory OEM Gen 3 trigger bar. This trigger bar has a roll bar MP3 coating on it, which provides a very slick and smooth surface. Okay. And here's a view of the flat face. Right. The second trigger is the agency arms trigger. This also has a flat face with a lip on the bottom. It is also a aluminum trigger shoe, and the finish is a gloss black finish. It also does come with a factory OEM Gen 3 trigger bar, but when you do get the agency arms trigger bar the trigger bar is only polished in 3 points, which is the plunger, the back, and then the crucifix. But as you can see here, I did give it a 25-cent trigger job and gave it a uniform high polish throughout the entire trigger bar. Okay, and this is the flat face view. For the agency arms trigger, when you do get it, it does also come with a factory OEM minus connector, but we're not opting to use this as I already have a Ghost 3.5 connector installed into my Glock 19 MOS. Also, I'd like to note that these are drop-in triggers, and they are for the Glock 9mm, 40 caliber, and 357. It will not go into the 9mm Glock 43. That will be a different trigger that you'll need to get for that model. So before we begin, let's do a safety check. It's no mag. Okay, chamber is clear, and let's begin. First, let's take a look at the factory trigger. As you can see here, I have blue tape on the trigger guard with some reference marks. The farthest left is where the trigger sits after the slide is first racked. The center mark is the trigger reset point, and the farthest right mark is where the trigger sits after it breaks. As you can see here, there's quite a bit of take-up. I mean, the take-up goes past the center reset mark, and then it finally breaks. Here's the trigger reset, right there. The break once again. Here's the reset. Then you can see how much take-up there is, the pre-travel. Quite a bit. Right. Let's get the other triggers installed. Just as a reference point, the trigger pull weight with the Ghost 3.5 connector is about 3.75 pounds, just under 4 pounds. Right. Here we have the Overwatch Precision Tact trigger installed. As you can see, I made additional reference marks on the blue tape. So the marking second to the left is where the Overwatch Precision Tact trigger rests after the slide is initially racked. To the right of that is the factory reset point of the factory trigger. So between these first two marks, you can see quite a bit of pre-travel that has been reduced just by installing the Overwatch Precision Tact trigger. I mean, we're looking at about 1/8 of an inch or so, right? And for the trigger itself, it's a nice flat face trigger. Feels so much better than the actual factory Glock curve trigger and the rounded face as well. So the flat trigger feels so much better on your fingertips. There is still some take up, all right? Then the clean break after you hit the wall. The reset points is still same as the factory trigger. I mean, it is using a factory trigger bar, so nice clean crisp break. Clean crisp reset. When you let go of the trigger, there's slight forward movement. As you can see one more time, here's the take up still. Then a nice break. and a nice break. So I mean, overall it did reduce quite a bit of the take up or the pre-travel. There is no over travel on the trigger after it breaks. Trigger pull is still at about 3.75. Yep, about 3.75. So it's still same as with the factory trigger, no change there. Let's get the agency arms trigger installed next. Here we have the agency arms trigger installed. I did not want to bore you with the trigger installation procedure as there are many videos out there. Also, the trigger installation is very quick and simple, and I feel that it can be done under 3 minutes. Let's take a close-up look of the agency arms trigger. Here, as you can see, it might be a little hard to see as the marks are very close, but the starting point of the agency arms trigger is right in between the trigger reset mark and the starting mark of the Overwatch precision Tact trigger. So right in between these two black marks is where the agency arms trigger starting point is. Still a very large reduction in pre-travel or take up. All right, so I would say about 1 millimeter greater reduction than the Overwatch precision Tact trigger. There is still gonna be some take up always on these triggers. I still say, yeah, it's less, about maybe 1 millimeter less than the Overwatch precision Tact trigger. You do have a slight take up, you hit the wall. Nice clean crisp break. Reset is also nice, clean and crisp, and it is pretty much right at the reset mark on the blue tape. Nice break, as you can see. Here's the reset point. When you do release, there is slight forward movement, but about 1 millimeter or so less than the Overwatch precision Tact trigger as well. So very nice. One more time, slight take up, hit the wall, and the break, and a nice reset. All right, so just as a reference, we'll do a trigger pull on this as well. All right, trigger pull is coming in about 3.75 as well. So between the factory curved trigger, the Overwatch precision flat trigger, and the agency arms flat trigger, the trigger pull weight is pretty much identical, has not had any changes. Okay, let's get down to the review of the Overwatch precision Tact trigger and the agency arms trigger. This is my personal opinion. They are both great triggers. You can't go wrong with either choice. That is why I installed the other trigger onto my Gen 2 Glock 19C. Yes, this is a compensated Glock. And I have the Overwatch precision Tact trigger installed onto my Gen 2 Glock 19C, and the agency arms trigger is installed onto my Gen 4 Glock 19 MOS. Now let's get down to the pros and cons. As for the pros, I love the flat face trigger on both of them with the little lip at the end. The lip provides a great indexing point, so you can always have a consistent trigger placement. The flat face trigger, the feel is great, and it allows a better consistent straight pull back on your trigger pulls compared to the factory rounded trigger with the rounded face. This tends to, at points where you can push or pull the trigger during your trigger pull, which will cause you to push or pull your shot left or right. So the flat face triggers are great. Additionally, a pro is it does significantly reduce the take up or the pre-travel compared to the factory trigger. And then I would say the only real con I have on it is just, I mean, personal preference is just the texturing, I would say. I do like the matte finish of the Overwatch precision Tact trigger over the gloss finish of the agency arms. It's just a texture feeling of it on my fingertip. The matte finish provides, like I said, a more textured feeling, while the agency arms glossy finish has this more of a slick feel, but it's not like your fingers are gonna slip off or anything like that. On the other hand, cosmetically, the agency arms gloss finish does pop a little more than the Overwatch Precision matte finish, and also the agency arms trigger has a nice A logo on it that stands out compared to the Overwatch Precision Tact trigger that has no markings whatsoever. But at the end, between the two triggers, I will have to give the advantage to the agency arms trigger. That is due to it having less of a pre-travel or take-up compared to factory, and also it has less of about a millimeter or so less take-up than the Overwatch Precision Tact trigger. So I have to give the advantage to the agency arms trigger. Well, I do hope you liked my review on both triggers. If you did, please like and subscribe. Until my next video, thank you. Just rolling in some final look at the trigger pulls on each. This is the Overwatch Precision Tact trigger. Slight take up, nice clean break, nice reset, slight forward movement again, slight take up, you hit the wall, break, reset, there you go. And this is the agency arms trigger. Less take up, nice clean break, nice clean crisp reset. There's a break again, and less forward movement. Alright, like I said, hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please like, subscribe. Until next time.